So, welcome everybody. If you're here for Digital Marine Radio, you're in the right place. If not, virtual boat crew training is taking place down in Miami. That's a different Zoom room though. What I wanted to do here tonight was to talk about some technologies that are already out there and fielded and probably owned by some, if not most, of the boat owners in the auxiliary, and demonstrate a few things and talk through what they're capable of, as well as what we might be able to use them for in some situations. And underneath it all, it was a desire that you guys are able to get the most out of what you've already paid for, primarily in the world of digital selective calling radio. So let me see if I can get the, what we're going to do is talk through not even a dozen slides. We'll roll through the basics, then we'll cut over to some demos and back and forth between the different technologies that are available to us. David, if you could throw up a poll, I'd like to find out how many of the people online own a digital selective calling radio.
Okay, stand by.
And I should have a screen share going with some slides coming up.
Okay.
Is that out there?
We don't see it yet.
Are you still seeing me?
I think so.
Joe sees it.
I see it.
It was there and now I stopped it. All right, let me try that again. Let me know when you see a
It's there.
I see it.
Okay,
It's
great.
there now.
Thank you. All right, so that's where we are. We're going to talk about a couple different technologies tonight, or protocols, if you will. The Automatic Identification System, or AIS. This is a collision avoidance system that's been out there 20, 25 years. And I'll make the slide deck available to anybody that's interested. But if you go to the Coast Guard Navigation Center, navcen.uscg.gov, they've got different pages on all this stuff with all kinds of wonderful information. So if you want to drill into that a little bit more and learn about nuts and bolts and itty bitty pieces of it, you can start there. Similarly, DSC, or digital selective calling, which is technology that piggybacks on the existing VHF radio protocols to allow sort of a paging service between boats. Been struggling to put this in terms of public telephony, where you have party lines back in the good old days, and the difference between party lines and direct dial, and eventually paging and other ways of reaching out to an individual rather than to whoever happens to be listening in.
Walter, the poll is ready.
Okay, what have we got?
Okay, I did not, so I'm launching it right now, folks, on your screen. So if you could take the time to answer, and we'll be giving people about 10 or 15 seconds. And 45 participants, 80% participation so far. And some people might just be on the phone. So Walter, that's the results right here. The results are 55% have one, 34 do
Okay.
not, and then 11 do not know based on their system.
All right, very good. Okay, we'll ask some more questions as the mood strikes here. So digital selective calling is a combination of voice and paging service, if you will. Page somebody, tell them to call you back, that kind of thing. And weaving in between these two protocols is a visualization tool that we'll talk about at the end if anybody's interested in hanging around for it. That's not strictly radio stuff per se, but it's navigation and plotting and all the wonderful boat stuff that we love the auxiliary for. So I use it as a tool to help illustrate what I'm talking about in other areas, whether it's navigation training or radio stuff. But some of you may find it interesting enough to listen for a few minutes towards the end of the show here. Okay. What's your number? Go ahead and ask a question out in the chat room. Who knows the number that ties all these things together? What is that number that identifies a boat in the world of digital marine radio?
MI number.
Close. What, did somebody put it in the chat?
Should be the MMSI number.
That's it. Yes, the correct answer is MMSI. And I thought it was all on the, oh, look at me, I did something fancy. I wasn't even trying to. All right, so I guess I get this stuff one block at a time now. I have no idea how I did that. All right, the Maritime Mobile Service Identity. This is a number that's assigned to a radio station. It's not necessarily assigned to just a single piece of equipment, but it represents, for the most part in our world, a vessel. So these are all numbers, no letters. They're 9 digits. They're used by DSC, by AIS, and some other equipment to uniquely identify a ship or a coast radio station. So for anyone that thought these were strictly for ships, there's our first little clue that they have a broader implementation out there. These numbers are regulated and managed by the ITU in Geneva, and there are international treaties that agree on how these things are going to be dished out and assigned by each of the member countries. And there's a link to some of the bureaucracy behind the number. Anybody know theirs offhand? Nah, nobody does. Okay, so these numbers are used by the automated information system and digital selective calling. Here's something that some of you at least should have gone through. We've got better than half of the crowd online tonight has got a digital selective calling radio. Time for the next poll. How many of those DSC owners, and if you don't have one, please don't answer the poll, but for the people that do have a digital selective calling radio, how many of them have an MMSI programmed into it?
It takes a while, Walter. It's not easy for me to just go back and forth here.
Okay.
Sorry. So
So
what?
how many people have a MMSI in their radio?
Who has an I'm going to say yes or no. Hold on. Sorry, it's just. Yeah.
All right, well, that's coming in and you guys are answering the question. There's several ways to get one for a recreational vessel in the U.S. For some reason, the auxiliary never got in this game, but Boat US, CETO, the U.S. Power Squadron, folks like that have a block of numbers assigned to them. There's a link at the bottom of the page that lets you know who was given which blocks of numbers for them to dish out to the public. But US, it used to be free. I think you need to be a member now. I have no idea about the other ones. Regardless of where you get it from, they all work the same once they are assigned, as long as they are actually programmed into the radio or other electronic device that they're used in.
58%, Walter, actually have an MMSI. The other ones do not.
Okay. Well, over 40% of us have got the radio and don't have it programmed. That's a lot better than the general public. I think probably 60–70% of recreational boats have a radio and don't have the number in it, don't have it assigned, maybe higher than that. Let's see, next slide here. For government vessels, these numbers are assigned by the spectrum management folks within their agencies. So Coast Guard has a block of numbers. They assign them to things that need those numbers. If you are a mandatory carriage vessel, which means you're 300 tons or greater, or you're carrying, I forget, maybe like a K-boat, over 50 passengers, you have to have one, and you cannot use recreational number from Boat US. You have to get one assigned by the FCC, and yes, they will charge you for that. So here's what the things look like. 9 digits, all numbers. You can break those down. There's a prefix of some sort. I said preface. I guess what I meant was prefix. And then a sequential number. And if you look at these numbers, generally speaking, somewhere in there is going to be a 3-digit number that identifies the country of origin for that assignment. It's going to start with a digit between 2 and 7, so anything that starts with a 0, 1, 8, or 9 is not the mid. If you see one that starts with 00, that indicates a base station, which is not a ship, but some sort of shore facility that's participating in the system, including at least some of our Rescue 21 towers, or remote fixed facilities, as the Coast Guard calls them. If you see one that starts with the number 99, that means it's an aid to navigation. It might have an actual transmitter on it. It might have a synthetic arrangement where another station is transmitting on its behalf. But 99 is an ATON and 00 is a base station. 10 followed by the 3-digit mid is some sort of a group calling code. They're not used very heavily, so we won't worry about those. But when you start poking around these things, if you're trying to decode them, you can find a lot of stuff stateside here that starts with the numbers 338, 366, 67, 68, 69. And 303 is a little bit of a weird one. It shows up as Alaska in some decoding systems. I'm not sure if that's, I don't think the state of Alaska has their own code, but anyway, we get some commercial traffic through the harbor here that that does show as Alaska as the country of origin. Who knows, maybe they broke off and decided to create their own great frozen republic up there. Coast Guard MIDs, which I think stands for Maritime Identification Domain, 366, 367, 368. And here's some examples. Cutter Hamilton here in town, 368, 883, 000. A lot of mandatorily equipped vessels have numbers ending in 3 zeros. It was done early on as a way of indicating that they were trying to build some intelligence into what should have been a dumb number, which turned out to be a dumb idea because now they're running out of numbers. So pretty safe bet that if you see an MMSI for something that ends in 3 zeros, that it's not a recreational boat. It's going to be some sort of a large ship. So here you have the Rescue 21 Tower, RFF McClellanville, which is about 30 miles up the coast from me here. Their number starts with 00 and then the 366, indicating Coast Guard, and then 0629. Not all of the towers have these numbers because not all of them have AIS receiving and or transmitting equipment. There's a RFF Mount Pleasant is about 2 miles down the street from me here. They do not have a AIS set up on that particular tower, so I have no idea if there's a number assigned to it yet or not. And then the sea buoy, about 15 miles east of me here, we have the safe water mark at the entrance to the Charleston Harbor Channel. That has an MMSI starting out with the numbers 99, as we expected, because that's an aid to navigation. So great, everybody's got numbers. What are we going to do with them all? Well, if we want to avoid running into things, we can go to the automated information system. Maybe it's automated identification system. I've seen it both ways. Here we have several different types of stations that can be out there transmitting. Class A ships have a 12.5 watt transmitter, usually an antenna that's higher off the water and therefore better range. Class B vessels are recreation boats. I think those are like 2.5 watt transmitters. So if you got $1,000 and an MMSI and you want to put a beacon on your boat, you can do that. SAR aircraft. This is not a very widely implemented thing, but you can buy a special transponder for a search and rescue aircraft, and that way when you're flying around looking for somebody, all the ships on the water that are receiving AIS stuff will know who you are and what you're doing. We already talked about the aids to navigation, the 99 series. There's several different ways of going about this, everything from a completely physical engineered solution where you would put an actual beacon with the number programmed into it on top of the aid to navigation, and it would sit there and beep away just like the light would be flashing away. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got the ability to broadcast synthetic aids to navigation from a tower without ever putting anything out there in the water at all. You can see this around the wreck of the Golden Ray down in Brunswick. There is a restricted navigation area down there, and I think there are 6 buoys or synthetic aids to navigation marking the edge of that. So if you're on a container ship coming into that port and you're looking at your AIS display, you would see 6 buoys marking the wreck of the Golden Ray and the restricted navigation area around it, even though there's actually nothing on the water that would say danger, do not enter. What else have we got here? Search and rescue transponders. You can go out and buy one of these little guys too. Looks sort of like these electronic flares that are showing up on the market. And what that would do is broadcast a distress signal from an individual or from a boat if you fell overboard. This is something you could have in a vest, and that would put a distress alert, which is a very visible AIS event designed to attract the attention of the operator, so that anybody that was passing by running this system would be able to pick your beacon up and know that you were out there in need of help. So in addition to the base stations, the Rescue 21 towers, we also have things called vessel traffic systems. Not aware of any of them in District 7, but Puget Sound, New York, perhaps Norfolk, Virginia, busy places where You actually have a facility that sits there and monitors all of the shipping traffic in and out and talks to people and keeps track of who's got a pilot on board and, if necessary, does traffic control. They also have the ability to do things in this system. At some point, maybe already, but at some point they will be able to broadcast special navigation warnings, perhaps weather or ice warnings, or ship movement instructions through the system, rather than putting them out on voice.
Walter, may I interject for a second?
Yeah.
I actually, I was on the water when the pom-pom went out. There was a reported 911 hang-up of somebody who actually couldn't confirm. And so they used that system to identify pilots or incoming ships where actually had beacons markers, so they could actually see who was inbound or outbound, and they were specifically talking to those assets and saying, you know, pilot leaving the Charleston Harbor, please be on the lookout. We have received a report. So they could actually use it on Channel 16 as a way of identifying assets. So especially if you have people who are working in particular areas.
Very good. Was this recently?
Yeah, that was 10 days ago. There was a 911 tower hang up that showed at the entrance of buoy number 3. Is that correct? The one at the entrance of the harbor?
Okay.
In Charleston Harbor. They say up to 5 miles out. They weren't sure because the triangulation came out that way. And so I made my way to the beginning of the channel, but then I saw the power boat going out, and they were just literally going back and forth.
All right. Very good. Okay. So AIS operates on a couple of previously voice channels from the Marine VHF spectrum. 87 alpha and 88 alpha were turned over to digital packets, and those are now going to be automatically and permanently squelched on any new radio. So you won't hear anything even if you tune to those. If you have an old radio, you may pick up some electronic sneezes on those channels, because that's what this stuff sounds like, just a little noise like that.
Wayne Kong shared a picture of the map of the U.S. with the VTS with all the various locations as they share with everybody, as well as Dave and then Alan Fuller spoke about the squadron going back online also in the next couple months for registry for free, the MSSI.
Oh, the Power Squadron. Okay, very good. I think I'm not sure I know how to find the chat room anymore. I'm not seeing it on my screen, but that's okay. If you're keeping an eye on it, appreciate that. So these transponders cost a little bit more than you might expect, primarily because of the technology in the thing. It's in telecommunications, it's something called self-organizing time division multiple access, which is similar to what's used on a cell phone tower. You got hundreds of calls going through a single tower at any one time, and somehow you don't end up getting cross-connected. But in its most basic form, an AIS transponder is going to listen to the traffic around it. It will start figuring out who's doing what slots are being used, and which ones are available, and then it will slot you into something that matches basically the amount of danger that you pose to somebody else, the size of your vessel, the speed, the rate of turn, the things that make you more volatile than a moored small target. So self-organizing time division multiple access, that will be on the test at the end, so you might want to write that down. AIS websites, I'm kidding about the test. Most of us have looked at marinetraffic.com every once in a while. I've watched this thing grow up from a grad school project about 12 years ago. I was one of the contributing sites here along the coast, and they've managed to monetize the thing, and you can track all kinds of stuff all over the world while watching 1 million commercials. There's another one out there called vesselfinder.com. I think there's one called Vessel Tracker. There's probably bunches more. But you can go to them and create an account and track certain ships. If you know somebody that's on a cruise ship and you want to add that cruise ship to your fleet, you can watch them go around. Most of these things are fed by terrestrial volunteer stations and or professional organizations. In my town, it's the Charleston branch pilots who have the best AIS reception site around here. It's actually on the same tower that the Coast Guard Rescue 21 gear is on. It's just further up the tower. So they've got a little bit further look out to sea. And they share their traffic to marinetraffic.com. And if you're looking at one of these websites and you drill into a ship, you can probably end up figuring out who the original reporting station was, maybe how far the ship was away from that station when it reported in.
There is also a phone app, Walter, called Boat Beacon for iPhones.
Okay.
Some people will also share something called Fleet Mom as a potential source for the features you just described.
Yeah, you got a lot of options as long as you're connected to the internet, don't we? Well, on boats, we're not always connected to the internet. Aircraft, we're definitely don't want to do anything where we're dependent on being connected to the internet. So let's look at how we can pass some information around once we've received it. So if you've installed a radio and connected to GPS and anything, you've probably come across this stuff. It's the National Marine Electronics Association Standard 0183. It's been around, I think, since 1983, and that is the protocol that all the players in the business agreed to use in order to make equipment interconnectable, if that's a word. So as a language, it's made up of sentences. The sentences start with a character, usually a $sign or an exclamation point. And then the next two letters will tell you what kind of a device it is that's doing the talking. And then the next three tell you what kind of a sentence is. And then after that, it all varies depending on what kind of a sentence it is. The most common thing out there is position data from a GPS. Those sentences are going to look like $GP GGA. That's a position fix. There are other GPS sentences that will tell you things like which satellites are in view and how tight the fix is. Maybe even just a raw time report, that kind of stuff. Data from an AIS receiver starts with exclamation point, AI, and then VDM, I don't know what it stands for, is a ship position report. We'll see some of this stuff in a few minutes. Plotters and autopilots also do this kind of stuff. You can send a waypoint, for example, from one device to another. If you've received a waypoint or a target hit on your radar and you want to send that to your GPS as a waypoint that you want to travel to, there's a way for these things to do that. And here we go with DSC data from radios. So these are the digital calls that go in and out of DSC radios. They start with a $CD, and then the most common sentences are DSC and DSE, which are requests or position reports and position requests. A million other things speak one form of this language or another: autopilots, step sounders, weather instruments. Sailboat people are prone to like to have a lot of data to plan a voyage around. So anyway, that's the language that these things speak. And with that, done, what we're going to do is take a look at some of this stuff on a screen. I have to figure out how to get this. Okay, do we see a chart now?
Yep.
Okay. So this is where I am, and this is the first look at the software that I use to help visualize some of this stuff. We've got a pretty large-scale chart here. These are different chart options across the bottom. For our purposes, we want a little bit more detail, so we'll go in there. That little boat icon in the middle is my position, and the red ring is a 5-mile radius drawn around it. So let's get, right now I've got the feed turned off on this thing. We'll turn that on, and what we should see, okay, we're starting to see some targets pop up. These are live signals coming in to an antenna here at my house. And if we look at a smaller scale chart or a more detailed chart, this stuff will start laying itself out to where you can tell what's going on. So we've got targets popping up here in the harbor, up here in the Wando River, over here in Shipyard Creek. Now these are raster charts, which are the electronic version of the old paper charts. I find it's a little better for this kind of work to use the vector charts, because I'm not really interested in detail on land. I just want to know where the water is and what ships are on it. So as this thing listens to ships, it will display their position and some other stuff about them. So here we go. There's something wrong with this picture here.
Excuse me, where did you obtain those charts?
The software, it has a chart downloader that's built into it. You go in and it hits the NOAA web server. They serve out the charts for free. So
Will it work? Do you know if it'll work on an iPad?
This particular software, I do not have it running on an iPad. I know it works on a Mac, but I don't know if they have it for an iPad.
Okay, and who's the software again?
We'll get to that. It's called OpenCPN, but we're just going to use it for now and not talk about.
Thank you.
But that's the third object here tonight. All right, so we have vessel innovation. If I mouse over it, we can see it is moving at 11.5 knots. Of course, at 307 true. Here we have the Thalia doing 6.6 knots. What's wrong with that? Anybody know what a black ball means hanging from the mast of a ship?
Anchored.
Anchored, yeah, doing 6 knots at anchored. Well, Thalia just moved and all of a sudden their anchor ball disappeared. Well, let's look at this guy up here. We've got two vessels right next to each other. What do we see going on here with Miss Kate and the Virginian? That may be hard to see. It's ball, diamond, ball on the Virginian.
One is towing the other?
Nope.
Dredging?
Not specifically, although that's what the Virginian is doing. This is a container terminal over here. This is the Wando terminal, and they're dredging the turning basin out here. Restricted ability to maneuver, red, white, red. So vessels can broadcast their navigation status. The tugs don't bother doing it too much, but I think they can. Here's some boats that are moored over here at the, this is Dutton's shipyard. And occasionally you'll see one with a fishing icon on it. Two triangles pointed at each other. So these are all targets that are zipping around in the air and running into the antenna in the backyard and getting pumped into the computer here. You can get a list of all the targets that you're hearing. And if you look at stuff on the list, this particular list is sorted by MMSI from littlest to biggest. So you see they start around 200, come up to 300, and then you got a ton of them in the US area, this 366 to 367. You can see some of them will tell you that they are cargo ships or vessel towing, pleasure boat, navigation status, moored, underway, restricted ability to maneuver. There's the Virginian, the barge, or the dredge that we were looking at. Anchored. For some reason I'm not picking up my location signal here. That red ball means that that should be some green bars if I was getting what I wanted. But if you're interested in a particular ship, Cape Douglas, for example, we can ask for target info, and now we see it's a Class A transmitter registered in the United States. It's got its position. The report that we heard from it is 77 seconds old. I want something that shows size. Well, let's look Italian. The system has the ability for the ship to transmit how large it is. And not only that, but where on the ship the GPS receiver is located. If we zoom in on Cape Douglas enough, no, it's not going to work for me. Here we have a passing situation out in the harbor. We'll look at this on the oh, these guys are transmitting their size. Anyway, what you'll get is a full outline of the ship that's scaled according to the length and the beam of the ship. So we talked about those sentences on which all this information is passed around before. This is what this stuff looks like. So you see a mix of GPS and AIS sentences coming in here. The GPS ones you can actually decipher and read. They're written in ASCII. The other ones come in some sort of a coded form. It's not really a secret. It's just a data compression thing, and I've never figured out how to turn that into the name of the ship. But if you look at these first two lines in the window here, AIBDM, those are ship position reports, and somehow buried in that 6-bit hex, I think it is the MMSI and the location and the speed and the course for the ship that we're looking at. So let me see. what it was. Any questions so far about the ship tracking stuff?
People want to go ahead and put it into the Zoom chat room. If you have anything to share, questions, or if you want to unmute, you can go ahead and unmute individually. You're welcome to do so and ask a question or share something.
How about a poll? How about, let's see if anybody's got an AIS receiver on their boat.
Okay, let me stand by. The poll is open, folks, if you want to go ahead and answer it.
Okay, I don't know if we're going to see any of this tonight. Usually later in the evening's a better time, but the Rescue 21 towers at McClellanville to the north and Port Royal about 40 miles to the south. I'll pick those up on a night with some good reception. And they show up as a different shaped target. They don't transmit a name per se, but they do spurt out a beacon about every 10 seconds. And sometimes they will be able to transmit information about some of the aids to navigation. There's only a couple of ATONs around here that have been assigned MMSIs. Some other areas, Georgetown's got a lot more than we do. And those things would show up.
The poll is only 16% said yes, 78% no.
All right, so we've got some people out there using it. And I'm guessing that those folks have got this thing connected to their plotter so they have a decent visual display on board. If you're looking at well, this is a little bit out of date. Okay, here's the raster chart for the, this is the sea buoy out at the end of the entrance channel. And that it is sometimes broadcasting. Generally, there would be a different symbol here, and it would say AIS next to it. Not all these, maybe they're just still in the testing phase around here. I don't know. I've never been able to find out who to talk to that knew what was going on. You can have some other little fun with this thing and put a topographical chart in here so that you know, there's a look at, this is a U.S. Geological Survey chart, kind of muddy at this resolution. I'm going to try and find.
People are asking Walter about the NMEA 2000.
Yeah, okay, so same principle. I don't know if they use the same sentences or not. NMEA 0183 is a point-to-point system where you've got basically two wires, one of which is a ground and the other is either talking or receiving lead. And NMEA 2000 is what's called a multiplex bus, which means that you can just plug stuff into it and it's got internal traffic cops that will listen to everything and sort it out and time it such that a new device can come in, be plugged into it, listen to everything, and only receive or only use the information that it needs. So I've never worked with a NMEA 2000 system. The old ones are fairly simple. You just got to get the right 2 wires and away you go. But if you'd like to upgrade any of the stuff on your boat, I'd be happy to help you figure it out, David.
Good luck.
All
I believe you're
right, so,
you might be considered part owner, but I'm rectifying that.
yeah, so David's referring to, we're discovering some weirdness in the new aux data system. We're trying to generate patrol orders, and he was a little disturbed to find out that I'm one of the owners of his boat, because they use the same language for ownership that they do for being a qualified operator. So with that said, let's bounce back to the DSC slides. And oh, okay. I didn't show. We can look at this later if anybody's interested. The software I'm using has the ability to record. It's called a voyage data recorder. So you can turn it on. It will record your position. It will record all the targets that you hear, and then you can play it back. So if you were out looking for fishing vessels, maybe on an aircraft flight, you could record it and then play it back when you're on the ground and get a little bit slower look at what's happening underneath you as you fly around. Digital selective calling. All right, this all happens on another formerly voice channel, VHF 70. Again, it's squelched out on all new radios. But what this does, think of it like a paging service. If you have the MMSI encoded into your radio, you can identify yourself, and if you build yourself a little directory of other people that you like or are interested in, you can call them. And when you call them, you can do things like ask them to call you back for a voice call. You can tell them what channel you want them to do it on. You can ask them where they are. You can tell them where you are. You can do a test call to the Coast Guard to make sure your stuff is working correctly. Or if you're trying to keep track of several things at once, you can set up a position poll. At least some radios can. I've got a new system here, and I found this feature in it I'd never heard of before, but you can give it a list of vessels that you're interested in and an interval, and ask it to ping each one of those vessels every 5 minutes, 30 minutes, once an hour. I don't know what all the intervals are, but it will automate a position tracking setup for you. Now, I thought that might be interesting if I was up on a lake, maybe over in Division 2, and I had a boat or two out on the lake and wanted to hold their guard. I can ask them where they are once every half an hour, and then get a voice call to make sure their operations were normal. So with that in mind, I'm going to try and do a couple of things for you here, and that's going to mean no more PowerPoints. We're going to try something different for a screen share.
Walter's not sharing. I'm not getting it.
I
Oh, here
think
you
I
go.
just started it.
Got it.
Is
Yep.
that it now?
Yep.
Okay. So what we've got is just an iPod camera pointed at the radio. Is it all washed out, or can you see any of the display stuff there?
We can see, yeah, we're seeing it blank, the underlining under it to the left. The below the 13, the lower level line is the lower obscure.
Okay. Well, I'm going to restart this thing, and what you'll see when you turn one of these radios on, they're supposed to display the MMSI if it's been programmed in. So there it is, 338 something or other. This particular radio has a, is my voice level okay?
Yep.
Okay. This particular radio has a GPS built into it. If it was installed somewhere that it didn't get a good signal, you can connect an external GPS and feed the position data into it. It's going to take a minute to try and figure out where it is here. But while we're going through that, we can start out with a test call to the local tower to make sure the system's working. And what I've done is scroll down to the option for DSC test. Oh, let me go back. So from the main menu, you've got these DSC radios are all going to have a button that says call or something equivalent to that. So when you hit that, it's going to bring up your options of what kind of a call you can make. The options on this one are individual, group, all ships, position request, position report, distress alert message, auto position following, or polling, that's the feature I told you about, and DSC log. So down here towards the bottom, we have DSC test. If we select that one, it's now going to say, all right, we're going to make this call. Who do you want to make the call to? And for a test call, there's really only one number that you should be calling. And I didn't write that in the PowerPoints, but it's a Coast Guard test facility that's built into the towers. So if we click test, and it's asking us to confirm transmit. We'll hit it. It says it's transmitting, and there's about a 4-second or a 10-second delay before the thing gets back to us. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or maybe not. That ID that you see up there on the third line, 003669999. That's the code for a test. I think it doesn't doesn't want to do that because it doesn't have a GPS fix yet. And this is the first
the
time.
top line said receive test acknowledged. What is that?
Did it? Usually it's going to squawk when it hears back from the tower.
Right after you did the test, it came up and said receive test acknowledged.
Huh. I missed that. Well, we'll try something else. Let's try a voice call to a radio. All right, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. All right, so here's a handheld radio with a different identity programmed into it. So if we go to do a call to this radio, got a little directory of stations that I've built into this thing. So I'm going to call Susan's handheld, which is the one I've got here, and I would like her to call me back on No, it's called 6.9. So I just killed her radio. It did switch over to 6.9. That happened automatically. I borrowed this radio this afternoon because the guy that was supposed to help me with this is not able to do so tonight. So we're working from scratch a little bit. And this radio does not have a working GPS in it. And my other one is out in the car. So, well, let's do this. Let's ask the other radio where it is. Send a position request. This worked before. All right. I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I skipped over the big red button. That's. Are we still seeing this?
You're seeing the oh, no, you're seeing an iPad now? Oh, yep, we're back on your screen.
Okay. Yeah, the iPod timed out for some reason. I thought it would keep going. All right, so the big red button, if you hit that button, it's going to ask you a couple of questions before it actually sends a distress call out for you. It will ask you the nature of your distress, if you know it, flooding, collision, fire, that kind of thing. If you have a GPS connected to it and it knows where it is, it won't bother you with that. If not, it may ask you to provide your own position if you want to go ahead and enter it. If nothing else, it will send out your MMSI and a distress alert. And that will be picked up on the towers. It will be picked up on every nearby radio. There's some relay logic going in there. The tower is programmed to ignore those calls for a fixed amount of time to allow a ship that is likely to be closer to respond before they before the Coast Guard itself responds. But when we're getting the RBS word out to the recreational public, you know, the business of getting these radios programmed properly and connecting them to GPS is high on the Coast Guard's priority list, because it takes the search out of search and rescue, right? If you know who it is and where they are, all you got to do is get there and deal with whatever the problem is. But if you don't know who it is or where they are, you got a bunch of work to do before you can actually help anybody. So, well, I'm dreadfully embarrassed, but for some reason I've managed to pick the one night in 3 weeks that I've had this radio that it has not been able to get a position.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The person has to have that number signed first, though, correct?
The number sign.
Yeah, the number assigned there. AMI.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so if you're Joe boat owner and you go out and you buy a new boat with a new radio, you go to the Power Squadron or Boat US and you create an account, you get a number, and you provide the description of the vessel and the emergency points of contact, very similar to what we have to do for PLBs. And then that information is made available at least to the U.S. Coast Guard or the Air Force, whoever's running the SAR coordination center where the satellite hits and stuff like that come in, so that if they get a hit, they can take that number and figure out which boat it is,
Right.
who the owner is, try to call the owner, see if he was screwing around with the radio and maybe hit the button by accident, that kind of thing, before they start launching assets.
You mentioned that this is high on the Coast Guard's, wish list, correct?
Yes.
And I'm just thinking, we do a lot of vessel exams. and I don't know how we could do it, but it'd be something to start exploring, is how we could approach individual boat owners to somehow get them registered and then get this programmed into their radio.
That would be terrific.
I think that maybe
We used to have some handouts on this
vision.
stuff that talked about what was necessary to really turn the radio into a distress
right.
signal device.
I would only think that maybe at the vision level, it could be looked at. Is there a way for us to be able to do this? So it's some way we can go out to the boat owner there at the marina. That's where we're going to get them, because they got to do it with the radio, and the radio is on their boat.
Yeah. We
And
had some
somehow get their number assigned to them.
Yeah.
It could be part of
Hey,
the.
That's
this
good.
is Bill Ballard here. That's sort of a normal part of a vessel exam. If they have a DSC radio, we ask them if they understand what DSC is and ask them if they have an MMSI assigned. And if not, we tell them to go to Boat US. But that's just been a general policy for us ever since I've been doing vessel exams. So we always ask.
I'm wondering if there's not a way, though. A lot of these people, yeah. I think, they probably don't even know what you're talking about. If we could somehow get the information and send it in and get a number assigned to them.
I believe you have to set up your own account with a number and it registers it in your name. And it's sort of like an EPIRB.
All right.
Okay, I gotta. Still trying to figure out how to tease this thing into figuring out where it is. So, position reports, position requests. A test call. There's a lot of handhelds out there that have GPS and DSC features in them now. I have a couple of standards Horizons around here. I'm sure ICOM makes a good unit as well. If you've got one of those things in your inland mostly, bring it out to the beach sometime and make sure you know how to do the test call. Position report. All right, so that's about all I'm going to be able to do for radio demos tonight, unless there's any special requests here. What I was hoping to do was to go back to the plotting thing, and oh, here, one did show up. So we have some ship targets we were looking at earlier. Are we back on the screen on the chart?
Yes, Walter.
Okay, so we've got the evolution here, which has been there since January. Did that sell, by the way, David? Any idea?
It's what?
Did they auction off the evolution?
Yes, it did, and it sold, and 1.13, including the paying the crew. So that's it went off.
We've got a strange case of a stranded ship stuck here in the harbor. I thought the opening bid was 1.25.
It never went for the full price, 1.3. Yeah, so that was the desired amount.
I told you that would have been an ideal flotilla facility. We could have just passed the hat, and we would have had our own meeting place right there in the middle of the harbor, our own radio shack, everything. All right, so we got some more targets moving around here. We got Mr. Connors, one of the tugboats that's dragging all the dredge spoils out and dumping it in the spoil area here. We've got Talia is heading out somewhere. If we go back to our target list, now we see up at the top of the list, rather than a Class A or B target, the way everything we're seeing here tonight is Class A, we have a DSC signal that has snuck into the mix. That was a position report from a volunteer who's driving around with a radio in the car. So if we look at that, that is 10 minutes ago. And he is not too far away, but it's a different shaped target now. So you'll see like a diamond shaped target. It is got a slash through it because it's considered as a lost target. After 8 minutes without a fresh report, the system marks it as lost. That's something that you can adjust if you want. And these are a few other things. That's a little storage unit I had where I was able to get a position report sent into the radio. So that is 2 wires output from the radio being sent to a COM port on the computer and then displayed on this navigation software. And let's see. This morning I had about 100 targets on this system. We got 42 at the moment. Let's see if there's any. Sometimes we'll get the Cutter Hamilton will show up on the list. For anybody that's interested in this kind of stuff, this is a tough one to find much wrong with, considering the price. It's open source software. It's a free download for Windows and Mac. I'm not sure about tablets. The charts are free. All you got to do is put the time into it to learn how to use the thing a little bit, and the documentation's not even all that bad. So you can, I load the full set of District 7 charts in here. So if I'm talking to somebody in another part of our district, crew training class or navigation questions, something like that, got all the charts here. We can go zoom out and let's see, somewhere here is I don't know, there's a way to all right, somebody pick a place in District 7 that's got nautical charts. Go to Miami, go to Key West. So each one of these colored blocks at the bottom shows you a different chart option for that area. We don't need these targets here anymore. So there's Key West. You want to zoom in? You want to zoom in a little bit? There's a zoom. You want to look at it in a vector style. There's a vector chart. You want to change the amount of detail. That's the bare minimum. That's the base map. That's standard level of detail. And that's full detail. So you can do that. You can go back to the raster chart and zoom it in a little bit. You can get even zoomier. Go out here to Mallory Square, watch the sunset. That's the, who's that basin, Joe? Is that Trumbull Basin? I forget what it's called. So there's Coast Guard Station. This was the old railroad terminal along here. Anyway, it's, even if you're just looking at a chart browser, you don't have to fool around with all these interfaces and ports and data streams. But as a free piece of software, I find it pretty hard to beat. Any questions out there?
Again, where do you get it?
Uh,
What's the site?
OPEN CPN .org. Oscar Papa Echo November, Charlie Papa November, decimal, Oscar Romeo George. And I'll send out the slides with the links to everybody that was in. Maybe I can post it here. David, can I post the deck somehow?
You should be able to add a file. You have in the Zoom option, you should have a file option. I did not. Participant can share with me. If you want, yeah. Do you have that option?
I don't see a Zoom option to add a file.
In the chat?
I'll just click the file button in chat. I'll see if I can get to it that way.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to be able to, is add the file and it will be downloadable.
Okay. Communications, training. And that should be pretty small and quick. No graphics in there. And boom, there it is. You guys should be able to grab the slide deck out of the chat room now. Okay, I have recalled my rover who was driving around with the radio that we were trying to track. He has been ordered to return to base with food.
Folks, if you want to go ahead and
if anybody's...
make sure you type in your first name, last name, Fatilla number, and ID number. If you have not done so, join the call. It was great that we had 47 people on this call to hear Walter share some of his interests and other folks. So don't forget to put that in. That way we will know to also reach out to some of you as Walter is developing a set of new toys and tools and toys that he gets on a regular basis and sharing his knowledge. So Walter, thanks for taking the time. And before people leave, let me do a quick little poll, if I may. I'm going to add one more question. So give me 1 second as Walter wraps it up.
Well, this radio still hasn't got a GPS lock, so do you want to swap radios, David?
Yeah.
That's as close to a wrap-up as I've got. Thank you all for your time tonight.
Okay.
I hope we're back.
Where do we send our
doing
names?
this for real.
Where do we send our names and ID?
In the chat?
At the bottom of the screen, you should have a button that says chat. It looks like a little cartoon balloon.
Nope.
Drag your mouse down there if you're on a PC.
Nope. It has like a Zoom app, and that's it.
Okay, well, just tell me who you are, and I'll type it in.
Okay, it's let me just check this here. Hold it. Chat. Let me see if this will work. Okay, let's try this one. This may work, okay?
Are you on a computer or an iPad?
iPad.
Ah, okay.
This should be it.
Now, how many people have somebody in their flotilla holding their guard while they're on patrol? Anybody?
Let me know if you got that.
Flotilla 2 does.
That was John and Jan, right? So I'm wondering if something like this would work for you.
We have 44 people still on the line that just put in a quick little chat, if you could, poll on this as a feedback. So just asking for your honest, I will share the overall results with Walter after this session. If you could just take a little few seconds to reply, that'll be great. We have 29 respondents out of 43 are still online. Appreciate it.
Well, if I'm still mad at my radio for not getting a GPS lock, should I strongly disagree?
Yeah, Walter, it would work great if everybody had radios up here on the lake.
No, I was thinking about like Lanier, where you've got the op center and you might have a boat or two out.
Or us.
You could
we have
use this kind of stuff.
We have a base station here, so
VHF.
VHF.
Yeah, typically here in the Atlanta area, both lakes, we have a radio operator in the op center when the boats are out.
Mm-hmm.
And they make voice calls every half an hour and ask for a position.
Yes.
They do. Yeah. Hey, Jim.
In Division 2, we've got flotilla 22, 25, 29 that consistently seem to have radio watch standards when the missions are out. So that's half of ours.
Well, I think there's a certain utility to passing data digitally with error checking and so forth, compared to writing it down. My own writing's so awful. If you maybe write down what you told me your position was, I probably wouldn't be able to go back and read it myself.
In Flotilla 22, we've got, let's see, I think we've got 2 facilities that have AIS on them. I'm not sure whether they turn them on all the time. But it would be nice, except for we have these funny things up here called hills. And the hill pops up between the facility and the operating center.
Yeah,
I guess it's a problem.
I've heard of hills, but we know God's here.
Mm-hmm.
I live high atop Mount Pleasant.
Hey, quick question. Is anybody here a ham radio operator?
Yes, sir. Kilo forward, Delta Foxtrot Zulu.
Good. Would you mind if I emailed you? I got an idea for ham radio. I'm a brand new tech.
Oh,
Just got my license. And I'd like to talk to someone about somehow doing something with it with the auxiliary. I mean, I think that would be a neat thing to kind of have organized as a ham radio operation, especially as we up and down the coast here. You know,
yeah, there is a our DSO for communications, Mark Gaisford, is a ham-oriented guy, and he's trying to set up some networks. I'm not a very good ham. I'm not a very active one. I mostly just fiddle with the.
I just got my license. I just got my license. And I'm looking for some guidance on equipment to get. You know, something I can use both in a vehicle and as a base station. So I'll email you if you give me this just email. And sure. I think it would be a good idea, especially during hurricane season, to have a net that goes up and down the coast.
Al Miles here. I have a comment.
Yeah.
I'm part of the group that Mark is involved with. Plus, the Coast Guard Auxiliary has its own system that operates not in the ham bands. That's HF, and in District 7, it's on every Tuesday night. In District 8, it's on every Wednesday night. Plus, they do drills for various emergencies, which Mark is very involved with. I don't think they so the ham and the ham frequencies, although I would say that all or most of the people involved are hams, but it's a completely separate operation, completely separate frequency group. There's no, how can I put it? You don't want to get the two crossing. It could get kind of complicated. I don't think they encourage it. Unless I'm wrong,
Yeah.
if somebody's got a different perspective on
Well,
that,
I'm
I'd
wondering
like to hear it.
why. It'd be nice if we could have a net, I could say, especially from almost Wilmington down to Hilton Head during the hurricane season. Your ham operators can provide a lot of information.
Okay, that's probably a good subject for a STEM meeting or something else. As far as what we covered here tonight, everybody that got the radio and does the code's going to run out and get the code now, right? And plug it in and start getting their names off the hook and being really annoying. That's what would make me happy.